Good Tuesday evening, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center taking a look at that current Doppler radar picture across the area. All quiet right now in terms of any precipitation, so that's some good news for sure. And those temperatures out there, they're pretty nice as well. Actually, going to be getting kind of on the nippy side as we look ahead toward those overnight hours where we could have some 40s here in play in many spots, it looks like. So that'll be something to look forward to here as we do get toward Wednesday morning, a little bit cooler than maybe we were really anticipating as we were looking back toward that forecast late last week, as we're seeing a little bit of cool air filter in, some drier air, and rain chances staying pretty low around, though it will be kind of breezy over the next 7 days. So didn't want to say it's going to be just completely calm around here, our region, but still looking fairly calm right now. Again, that radar picture is staying dry here in the local area, so that's some good news here. If you're trying to kind of get away from that rain, I know Ocala last observation was 70, so a little bit warmer down there toward Marion County, and where I'm at, we're actually, though, with the latest numbers, really cooling down a more rural spot down to 56 degrees. That kind of tells that weather story here this evening as we're kind of looking at some of those different observations here. Again, luckily we're not dealing with a local severe threat here in the near term. That's the good news. I mean, even going out here the next 7 days, not necessarily seeing anything. So definitely a little more on the tranquil side here as we go ahead and look outside at some of those different cameras. I know things are going to be getting busy in terms of college exams coming up. So let's start off with the camera there at Florida State, the traffic camera there toward the FSU area. We'll go to Jefferson Street at Woodward Avenue, and you'll be able to see what's going on there right now. The Florida 501 perspective. I know students going to the different libraries to study out there for sure as they're getting ready for those exams coming up. Same at other universities other than Florida State as well. As we go ahead and go towards some different perspectives. We'll go over towards Lake City right now, and you'll be able to see that camera, at least the Columbia County region, I-75 at US 41441. You can see, again, it's pretty nice out there overall. Might need a light jacket, though, as they're getting up tomorrow morning, as I kind of hinted at there with those 40s and toward Gainesville, of course, toward the University of Florida. You see pretty tranquil out there as well, and then towards St. Johns County will pop up that view, and actually there's no view there right now. Sometimes these cameras will have some issues, but I-95 at Hendricks Avenue, you can see here the shot as we get out toward that area. Things again do look pretty nice, and there's some outdoor events coming up this weekend as I go ahead and go away from the camera shots, and those outdoor events are looking pretty nice here as we do look ahead in toward the timeline for sure. We'll go ahead and get back on over to that whole area viewpoint now. And as we do so, just speaking of areas like Thomasville, for instance, I know they have that Thomasville Rose Show and Festival Friday and Saturday, and things looking really nice for that overall here as we do look ahead in the timeline. At least we're not dealing with chances of rain that are widespread. There is a small, silent 10% I have in there as we're looking ahead, but again, nothing to be too concerned about here overall, and that's great news. Now, unfortunately, we did have a tornado that was really serious 2 weeks ago today now. As we look back, I mean, the time kind of flies in a way because we've been so busy here in the Weather Center lately, and there are going to be some threats off toward the west and north that we'll get into, but I do want to review this again because last Friday the National Weather Service in Charleston, South Carolina upgraded what I'm about to say here on our GR2 analyst computer. This storm here with this terrible looking hook got upgraded to an EF4 tornado there in parts of Georgia. This is west of Savannah. As we kind of look here at our map, you kind of get that perspective here, and we see around Pembroke, the storm at first, it wasn't even maybe producing a tornado based on the different times there with this, but all of a sudden, I mean, instead of just the influence correlation coefficient, this turned into tornadic debris there that was co-located, and we had winds with this up to 185 miles an hour, one of the strongest tornadoes you ever see in this part of the country, and the strongest so far in 2022. So just wanted to kind of review that. They upgraded that. They had to get some experts in there to make sure what they were seeing was verifiable there by some structural experts there. Just try to get an idea on how the buildings they were building, if the winds here that they were estimating would make sense for the type of damage they were seeing, and ended up going up to an EF4. So let's go ahead and pop up that enhanced Vegeta scale now. We'll go over there toward our graphic system. You kind of get an idea of what we're talking about with that. So we're talking about devastating damage there. One fatality toward Pembroke, Georgia there, toward the west of Savannah. That's a couple weeks ago. Now we've had some other tornadoes that have been pretty noteworthy as well in the country lately, going back toward Bell County, Texas. That was a very noteworthy one. Last time I checked, there was an EF3 there. I haven't seen if we've got any upgrades on that, but very serious damage out toward that area out there and toward central Texas as well. Some areas, I mean, honestly, haven't necessarily seen these type of tornadoes that often. I mean, to be quite honest, we were thinking maybe, especially in Texas last week, we were not expecting maybe a stronger end tornado there, higher end tornado in toward that region, where it did end up ultimately touching down. And then that storm there in toward Georgia, there was a pretty enhanced type of risk there that we were covering for our local area. That's just outside of our area, but it was still something where once it touched down, it was causing devastating damage. And that's why it's so important when there's a tornado warning in play, even if it's not on the ground right then, and there's not a debris signature right then, you gotta take those tornado precautions. Interior room away from windows there, putting as many walls between you and the outside as possible. But when you get to this type of damage, sometimes, honestly, those tornado precautions, they don't. I mean, sometimes it's just so strong that you really almost need a basement scenario where you can get into that. You need that to take shelter in, and it's just not really available necessarily in this part of the country. But as we get toward tomorrow, the SPC outlook here, you can see getting over towards some different areas. I wanted to bring this up because the threats today haven't really been that big of a deal. But as we get toward tomorrow, you see, at least the threats in terms of severe weather, we've actually had some wintry weather we'll try to get into here in a few minutes toward the northeast. It's been pretty incredible. But you see toward Oklahoma City, Norman, Tulsa, there's a slight risk, mainly for damaging winds and hail here. Though an isolated tornado can't be ruled out. This threat of some severe weather goes all the way toward Springfield, Cape Girardeau, St. Louis, even Kansas City up there as well. And you actually see a threat. I don't normally go this far out here with these maps, but we have a threat all the way out there, folks, toward Eugene, Oregon, the University of Oregon there in that darker green. There's actually a low-end tornado threat there as we get closer toward Portland and Eugene tomorrow. An unusual scenario there could have an isolated tornado or two evolving along the western coast of Oregon. Not something you're seeing too much in the weather world. And as we get toward Friday, a more robust threat seems to come into play here. We'll see how bad it is. We're not really sure at this point. Right now, I'm not maybe expecting something to the effect of what we've seen lately with some of these events. And again, this is not really affecting areas here toward Florida and Georgia as we're looking ahead in the timeline. So that's some good news. But as we look up toward these areas, our neighbors there toward Kansas, Garden City, Colby, and toward Nebraska, Cook there, Norfolk, also Valentine there, Valentine, and then you see Sioux Falls and South Dakota. You kind of get the idea. Could have some severe weather popping up on your Friday, so we'll definitely keep our eyes on that here as we look ahead in toward the timeline. But let's go ahead now. I was kind of alluding to it. Let's go up to some of that winter weather here as we get toward parts of the Northeast. Just incredible, and actually had quite a number of power outages as we get towards some of these areas. So not all just fun here with the snow. Of course, this wasn't fun at all with this tornado toward Georgia there. But you see, as we get toward the northeast now with our GR Earth computer, you can see snow still falling there as we get toward areas like Buffalo, New York. I'll put our METAR on to kind of identify things. Some of this is just in an air mass above freezing, so not always necessarily snow, but you see toward Syracuse, it's actually some rain, even though our system's showing it as snow right now. You can kind of get the idea, though. We've had power outages, quite a few of them, though, in the state of New York, with some stronger winds that have been in play. I know, looking also down earlier, there was a snow squall warning toward Pennsylvania earlier on, as those hazardous driving conditions can come into play sometimes to catch people off guard. I know that's something that they use there to alert phones when there's not necessarily maybe a wider spread warning in play, but targeted threat there with the more hazardous, more reduced visibilities. But just you don't necessarily expect to see this in April. I know we were getting some numbers here, well over a foot in some spots. Other spots a lot less, just depending on the temperatures and the terrain, things like that. But this, you don't see this very often here in the month of April, necessarily this much snow in some of these spots. Granted, some spots in these northern areas can get snow, but I know we had a bunch of snow toward North Dakota as we were looking back, and now we're going to be talking about a severe weather threat starting to set up, as you saw there toward Friday around Sioux Falls. But there is a little bit of a threat here. I'll take off some of this right there. But that was the general thunderstorm outlooks that we're showing you at this point. No marginal risk in play, but see some thunderstorm activity here just north of Dallas there on Ardmore, Oklahoma. You kind of get the idea there. We got some action going on west there of the interstate, for instance, that is kind of interesting, but temperature in the 60s here, not severe weather type conditions here at this point. Again, you saw tomorrow a threat trying to come into play. We'll keep our eyes on that, of course, but we always got to respect all the threats. Of course, Friday we had an extreme hail situation toward Arkansas. There were indications there was a significant tornado on the ground, but Weather Service never found anything there. Little Rock office didn't end up finding any damage out there. Pretty bizarre situation, bad radar coverage, and some bad reports, unfortunately, they're leading to those. But we did have some extreme hail causing some accidents even on the road. I mean, fog there as well. As we go back, though, over, of course, when there's severe weather in our area, which we're not dealing with here at this point, things are more tranquil now. I like using a word like that, even if I'm using it over and over, because that means we're not having to deal with the crazy weather that we've been dealing with a severe threat for several weeks toward the local area right now. Things look pretty good in regards to that. We did have a threat kind of creep up on us a little bit back on Sunday with some hailstorms developing locally. I mean, toward St. Johns County, even there. Of course, we were on the air for a while with that covered on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch to keep you abreast of the situation. But and we ended up having wind threats closer toward the Big Bend, even as we were looking ahead later on. That was a little more anticipated on the model runs there, but even those were a little displaced there. Expecting more of that action toward the north here and a little more of a marginal threat. We had a marginal risk on Saturday and Monday as well at points, and ended up not really seeing anything in those respective time slots there, the 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. So just incredible how sometimes weather can kind of not really go by what you would expect here based on the atmospheric conditions and the model runs. Model runs are never perfect. That's what they tell you. That's what you're always told here in the meteorology world. They're never going to capture things perfectly, and you got to adjust your forecast accordingly here as these situations do arise, because the atmosphere is not going to just read a model run and duplicate that. As we get toward the next 7 days, here's a forecast here from the Weather Prediction Center up toward areas of Oklahoma, East Oklahoma, maybe Southwest Missouri, Northwest Arkansas. We're talking about Tulsa, we're talking about Joplin, we're talking about Fayetteville and Fort Smith there. Could end up having quite a bit of rain, maybe some flooding concerns there. But as you look closer toward home here, folks, I mean, you kind of get the idea. Things are looking pretty nice as we get toward this local area in the next 7 days. Some rain possible. There's some scattered shower potential, as you can see there. Overall, things are looking pretty calm as we see that there are going to be some breezy conditions around at times over the next 7 days here, but 10% on Wednesday, 10% Thursday. You see it all the way through next Monday here with that low and rain chance, that silent 10, and these temperatures below average tomorrow morning. It's going to be chilly out there, but then warming back up to what you would expect here, really, those average conditions before we start to get above average later on as the weekend gets here, and then early next week kind of step on over and say you guys that now. We'll step on and say Saturday through Tuesday here, and you can kind of see 85, 86, and then 88 degrees there. You kind of get the idea of really warming up on us here as we look ahead here, folks. So definitely something that's kind of intriguing to see here as it gets into where that summertime pattern, that warmer weather. Just something that you'll kind of be seeing here, that air mass kind of taking on over here as we get toward early next week. So if you like the warmer weather, that's what we're going to be seeing, of course. So you saw that 30% chance of rain. You can kind of see it over my shoulder for next Tuesday even. Some more moisture, maybe another system trying to come in by then. But you see things, again, pretty nice overall here in the period, and that's what I like to see here. Of course, we do have some different threats toward Oregon, of all places, and then Oklahoma here, and Missouri tomorrow that we'll watch, and then that threat toward areas there, and maybe even starting with South Dakota on Friday. So just some different threats to watch. You can see some storms out here, not even seeing much lightning at this point around Ardmore in Oklahoma. So we'll zoom back out here. You can kind of see some of these numbers actually. Observations, retard, like San Antonio, some of them aren't showing up quite right sometimes, but generally this information is accurate here. The data is accurate, so that's some good news, but just occasionally a number will come through here that's a little bit off, but these numbers from a little while ago at this point, going back to that maybe the top of the hour in many instances, and where I'm at now, we've already dropped down to 53.7. We've dropped about 2 degrees here since we've been on 55.5 just a little while ago here when we were tracking things. now down to about 54 with that number as you kind of round that on up. So definitely cooling down. You'll need that jacket with a little bit of a breeze out there at times. Right now, not really showing that on our anemometer, but we'll kind of keep our eyes on things here in the Weather Center as we do look ahead in the timeline. Of course, you can always go to cloudweather.com/radar for an interactive look at things all across the country when we're not on the air here. That's a great platform to go to. Though, of course, interesting to see all that snow toward the northeast and some power outages even with those stronger winds. Now, when we talk about wind around here, it's just going to be breezy. Not really expecting maybe the winds like what we saw here overall a couple weekends ago there, but it's going to be breezy for a long stretch. So, I mean, that's something that's kind of unusual here for this area. So, something to kind of bear in mind. I mean, I guess a limb could fall here or there on a power line, but overall, the threat of that doesn't look as robust, maybe, with those winds not getting to those extremes like 58 miles an hour. Shouldn't get that high here. In this pattern here over the next 7 days, like what we saw toward Gainesville that Saturday afternoon there, going back about, I guess, a week and a half ago at this point. Thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud. Of course, you can always watch my updates on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Subscribe on YouTube. That's a good way to get the updates right there. Just search for meteorologist Casey Cloud. Platform you can even watch on Roku, your Roku TV. Just pop it on there. The updates from me right there. Really just hit a couple buttons on the remote and you'll have the latest weather information as necessary and generally on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thanks so much for tuning in and have a great night.